Okay, thanks, Prof, for the introduction. Hello.
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay. No, it's fine. I'll just hold it.
Okay.
Okay, so morning everyone. I'm Sunan from NUS Hackers. Okay, if you don't really know, NUS Hackers is a students' interest group, and our mission is to spread the hacker culture. Okay, but today is not about NUS Hackers. Today, this workshop is about HTML, CSS, and Git. So like Prof showed you a bit earlier, some of you might already have experience with HTML. Can I know like who has made a simple web page before? Anyone? Right, a couple, right? Okay, so for those who have made a simple web page before, you probably will already know what I'm going to cover today. But I hope to be able to teach you something new as well. Okay? For the rest of you who did not raise your hand, I assume you don't know much about HTML, which is really something you need to know being a student of SOC. Okay, HTML isn't new technology. It's been around for a couple of decades. Okay, so today the aim of this workshop is really to give you a very short introduction, a gentle guide to HTML, CSS. So I'm actually holding all your hands and walking you into the ocean that is web technology. Okay, HTML, CSS, they form the basis of web technology, and like Prof showed you just now, the source code of a website, those are all HTML. Okay, so the aim of this workshop is really just to expose you and to guide you very gently, and the rest of it is up to you to explore. Okay, I'll be providing you with a lot of reference links. So all those links are for you to go ahead and explore, because that's what Orbital is about, right? Exploration, self-learning, independent learning. Okay, right. So I'm from computer science, going year 3, and if you're interested in NUS hackers and what we do, feel free to talk to me after the workshop or during the break. And I use Vim. Okay, so any Vim users here? No, that's disappointing. All right, so you all have your laptops open. Please go to this website. Okay, all my slides are hosted here on GitHub. And if you don't already have a GitHub account, you need to get one. Okay, you need to get one, or else you will not be employable. Okay, please go to this website and you can follow along with me. Got it? Got it? Okay, if you don't want to go, never mind. You just look at my slides, okay, and watch me present. All right. So instructions have been given to you all on Piazza what to do to prepare. So first thing you need is a modern web browser. IE10 is pretty good, but I'm not exactly sure how to use it. So I use Firefox. You can use Chrome, whatever. Okay. And if you have installed Sublime Text, it's a very good text editor. If you do not, you can use Vim or Notepad++ or even Notepad, but you will be having a horrible time. So if you can, go ahead and install Sublime Text. The URL is on the website. I mean, it's on the slides, so just click and get it. For the next part of the workshop, you'll be learning Git. So please get Git for your platform. If not, you can install it during the break. And make a GitHub account. Okay, serious. Please make a GitHub account. Right, so this, if you go to the URL, you get this slide, and on this slide, you will have the links to slides and notes for my presentation, okay? The notes are written in Markdown format, so they are meant to be plain text and kind of easy to glance through. But really, what you will want to look at is the slides, okay? The slides have all the coloring, syntax highlighting, and those will help you to learn and visualize. Okay, so let's just begin with HTML. Hang on. Anyway, this is the reason why I use Firefox, okay? Tab groups, extremely awesome. Okay, cool, HTML. Right, HTML has been around for a very long time, and it's basically the backbone of web, okay? Everything you see on your browser is essentially HTML. HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. It's not really important, okay? And actually, how does HTML really work? Anyone knows how HTML works? How does it get displayed on your browser? Okay, a very quick, since I have a whiteboard here, I'll just use it, okay? So a very quick introduction to how the web works. If you don't already know, this is you. Okay, I'll draw a girl. This is you. You are using your laptop, okay? And on it is, okay, I'm trying to draw Chrome, but I can't really draw it well. Okay, you're using a browser that speaks the language that is HTTP to a server, which can be Google server, or if you're accessing NUS website, NUS server, and the server responds with HTML, CSS, JavaScript, etc. This gets fed into your browser, Chrome, and Chrome displays to you a very nice web page. Okay, HTML is the backbone of the website. Okay, it forms a structure. So if you take a look at how HTML actually looks like, okay, if you're using Firefox, you can follow along. Just on the slide, right-click on any website, right-click, and view page source, and you get this. But I don't really like to see it this way. It doesn't really help me much. I like to do right-click, view page info. Oh no, sorry, inspect element, and you get this little don't know what you call it, developer toolbar. Okay, so make sure you can see this on Firefox or Chrome. So this is very useful. It shows you the HTML. This is essentially what the page is. Okay, this area. I hope you can see my cursor. This area it's all HTML. This is what HTML is. What you see here is the result of applying CSS and JavaScript to the HTML. Okay, this is all done by your browser. Pretty cool, right? So I love keyboard shortcuts. So Ctrl+Shift+I is the shortcut to get this. Okay. And if you want to inspect a particular element, for example, if you want to see how I managed to make these keys look like that, Ctrl+Shift+C will give you this box selector thingy. Okay, and you can hover over things. So if I look at this, I want to look at this arrow and see what it's made out of. You can see actually, oh, it's a div. You navigate left, blah blah blah, and we'll learn about that a bit later. Okay, so keep in mind these shortcuts. Okay, it's very important, very useful. Alright, so let's get our hands dirty now. Let's make a very, very simple HTML page. Okay, the first step is to obviously create a new file. So go to your desktop or wherever you want. Let's make a new folder for this and call it Orbital. Okay, for this segment, it's fine to just use Notepad. Create a new text document and call it index.html. Okay, the file extension is quite important, index.html. And then open with Sublime Text or Notepad, whatever you want. And the simplest HTML page is actually just this. Okay, Hello World is too mainstream now, so I'll just hide everyone. Save it. Everyone doing fine? Shouldn't be a problem. And double click and it should open up in Firefox. And you see this. Hi everyone. Right, without doing anything, just typing text, your browser can display it. The problem with this is that this is badly formatted HTML. Okay, this essentially isn't HTML at all. It's just a text file with an extension of HTML, and your browser tries its best to display something. Okay, the browser is extremely forgiving because people who are not technically competent, unlike you and I, people who are not technically competent, they use the browser all the time, and it will be extremely frustrating if they see Stack Overflow or like your error output from Java all the time. So your browser tries its very best to always display something and display something nicely. Okay? So this is bad HTML. What is the minimum markup? You know, if you use C, you have your int main. If you use Java, you have your public static void main. So what is the simplest HTML? And that is the reason why we want to use Sublime Text, because it is extremely optimized for web technology, web development. What you have to do is just type HTML and press tab. Okay, those who have subline text, you can do that. If you are on Notepad, then I'm sorry, too bad. Just type all this in. Okay, so I repeat again. HTML, press tab, and you get all this. Alright, pretty awesome. This is the minimum markup for a well-formatted HTML page. Alright, so just make sure you are on this stage first. Okay. Okay, so what you're seeing here is HTML. Essentially, it's HTML. So I'll just walk you through some of the, we call these tags. Each of these is a valid HTML tag. I'll just walk you through what they mean, okay? Very quickly, this strange looking thing, doc type HTML, is basically here for legacy reasons to help older browsers figure out how to display this web page. Oops, sorry. The HTML tag is basically saying that, okay, what is within this tag is a HTML page. The head tag is less for humans and more for robots. So besides you and I, there are a lot of robots crawling the web, okay, on the internet. So that includes Google's search bar, Bing, all these robots that are crawling Amazon or whatever websites they want to crawl data on the web. So head is more, the head tag, what is in the head tag is more for these robots that are using the web. And what is important for us is actually this title. Okay, this title is what's here. Okay, so for this slides I set a title to be this Orbital 2014 workshop, and also the title is displayed when you search for web pages. Let's see. Okay, so you see, when I search for something and it is displayed, this is actually the title of the web page. So if you click, you can see that's the title. So having a title for your web page is important if you want your search results to be intelligible. Okay, unless if you don't set the title, it will just be the name of your file. Cool. Right. The next part is the body. Okay, the body is what is actually displayed on the website or on the page, and this is what we'll be doing most of the time. We'll be putting stuff here, removing stuff here, and styling things here because that's what is visible to us and our users. Okay, the theme of today's workshop is something I hope will be useful for you. You're all embarking on this journey that is Orbital, and some of you might be doing web applications. I know a team that is doing a game. You might want to do an Android app or iPhone app. I don't know if that's possible. I think it is, right? Yeah. So you can do whatever you want, but really, you need a project page to show people what your product is about. Okay, you cannot underestimate the importance of having just a splash page to showcase your product, to tell people what is this and give them instructions on how to install it. So regardless of what your project is about, you will probably need a page to describe your project. And that is what we are trying to do today, okay, with this workshop. With this workshop, I hope to be able to give you a very bare bones project page that is simple and easy to maintain, and you can add on stuff to it to make it look as nice as you want, to make it have your style, okay, your flavor. Yeah. So the first thing that we're doing, we already have a nice standard template, okay, but it doesn't really display anything. Okay, let me show you how the page looks like. Hang on. So this is the result of this. There is nothing because look, it's empty in the body. Okay, if you want to see something, we're just gonna type something in body. For example, okay, save it, refresh, and you see, hey there. Okay, but you see the title, Mozilla Firefox It's not exactly what we want, right? So let's just add in a title. So the title can be anything you want. You don't have to follow what I'm typing exactly. Just if you have a name for your project, key in your name. For example, my project was Snowball. Okay, Snowball is a game. So maybe I want the title to be a bit more descriptive, so that when people search, they actually know what Snowball is about. Okay. Right. So that is my tagline. And if we save it and go back to our web page, refresh, and you can see the title has changed. Okay. So now it is what I typed. Cool. Okay. No problems, right? It's simple. Okay, the next tag that we are learning, okay, these are our HTML tags. So the next tag that we are learning is what we call the header tag. Okay, you have a series of header tags from H1 to H6. This is in decreasing order of importance. So H1 means that this is a very important header in my website. So I'm sure you have done like proposals or reports, okay, and you have different headings, and your headings have varying weight, varying importance. So maybe um, like safety is the most important one. Another safety, you have different kinds of safety. Transportation safety, food safety, those are the second level of importance. And then maybe you have a lower weightage, like costs or something like that. So let's take a look at how headers, how do you use headers, okay? Right, so we have plain text here, and when we want to add a header, what you have to do is just type H, for example, the first header, H1, type H1 and press tab, and it will complete the text for you. So it's very simple. Okay, and then you just type the header that you want. For example, I just want to type the title of my project. H1, save it, refresh. Oops. Right. You should see this on your web page. Okay, if I'm going too fast, just tell me. If I'm going too slow, you can just go ahead with the slides and try things out on your own. Okay, the slides are all online. So, like I said, there is from H1 to H6. So let's just make everything and see how things look like. Okay, so I hope you can see this. This is a H1, snowball is a H1, and then slowly H2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you can see by default, the browser displays the headers differently, with H1 being the biggest and the boldest, and H6 being pretty much insignificant. It has a different styling from the default one, okay? And here I want to say a bit about default styles by your browsers. So if you remember the shortcut key, Ctrl-Shift-C, you can inspect each of these elements, okay? So if you see page 1, and we go under rules, okay, if you can't follow along, it's okay. You can see that there are no rules here. Okay, your browser actually has a predefined set of styling rules for each of your headers. So for example, in your browser, you can set your default font. Okay, for now my default font is a sans serif font. So my browser, for any web page that has no font defined will set the default font to be the font of my choosing. And that is the reason why if you use Chrome and someone else uses Firefox, you will probably see different things because browser can choose what is the default styling they want to apply. Okay. Another question is no other questions. So let's say for headers. Is everyone okay? Right? Simple, right? No problem. So after headers, you have the next tag, which is a paragraph tag. Okay, P is for paragraph. So paragraph of text really just represents a paragraph of text, and it can be used pretty much anywhere. So in this case, we are going to use our paragraph. Remember, P tab will give you this. We're going to use the paragraph to kind of have a catchy subtitle for our project, a short description of what our project is about. So for example, for my project, okay, so this is my description. You can type whatever you want for a description, and you should see your paragraph appear here. Okay, simple, no problem there. The next one is a very, very common tag. Okay, it's called the div tag. I think it stands for division, but everyone just calls it div. If you actually inspect a real life HTML page, you will probably see this a lot. Okay, so let's just take for example the Mozilla Developer Network guides. Okay, so this is a very useful guide. I'll give you the URL to it later. So if you inspect this, okay, you can see. Can you see? Is it okay? Under body, there's a div. Under div, there's another div. Under this div, there are two divs. And under this div, there's another div. And under this div, there's a link. And under this div, okay, get the point, right? So these are very common in web pages. The reason why they are common is because it is a generic container to hold something. You can have a paragraph in a div, you can have headers in a div, you can have a header and a paragraph in a div, and you want to call this div, for example, my description or my content. So what is useful about div is that it modularizes your HTML. Okay, you are programmers, you should know like modular code, small methods, small classes, etc. So div is like the class of HTML, if you want to think of it that way. So what we're gonna do is we have a new div, okay, and the div will separate the different sections of our page. So for example, div tab will get you a new div. And for example, this div, we'll be talking about installing our application, okay? For example, I'm making a game, so there's no installation required, so I'll just say that. So this is my installation div, okay, describing the installation process. And I want another div to showcase the authors, okay, the creators of this game. Cool. So now I have, okay, maybe I want to wrap the original, my description in the div as well. Cool. who is using Sublime now? As in, you just downloaded it and use it. Okay, who has been, okay, thanks. Who has been using Sublime? Okay, cool. So you all should have no trouble. For those who are new to Sublime, what I just did there was a very pretty cool thing in Sublime, right? Don't you agree? Control Shift P, right? So try Control Shift P, and you get this heads up display thingy. And basically it's like a search for all the functions that Sublime can do. And what I wanted to do just now was re-indent all my lines. So all I had to type was just re-indent lines. Press enter and it will re-indent my lines for that. Okay, it's useful if you cannot remember the keyboard shortcuts. So you can just fire out Ctrl Shift P and try and type something that remotely matches what you want to do. And most likely you can find it. Cool? So right now, let's go through the structure of our page. We have the HTML saying that this is the HTML. We have the head with a nice title and the body with 3 divs. Okay, a div for the description, a div for the installation, and the last one is for the creators. Okay, this is likely what you want to do for your web page, I suppose. Cool. Let's move on. One caveat about HTML that many beginners will fall trap to is that HTML ignores white space. So for example, if I want to make a sentence go on a new line, like here, okay, maybe on my source code of my HTML file, I will have a new line, and I will say I want to say, for example, the names of the creators. So that's my name, and my partner was Chris. So what do you think will happen when the browser tries to display this? Take note. Okay, the new lines don't show up in the page at all. That's because HTML ignores white space. Not white space, sorry. HTML ignores new line. Okay, new lines don't matter, especially if they are in a p tag. Okay, they just take this entire p tag as a series of text and they display it according to their own layout rules. So how can you force a new line? One way to do that is to have another p tag. Okay, so the way to do it is as such. Make a new p tag and paste it what you want on a new line. And yeah, you should get that. Okay, this has to do with what kind of tag it is. A paragraph tag is what they call a block element. Okay, a block element means that it just goes on the next line. Okay, it takes up the entire width. We'll see more of this later in the CSS part. Okay, but for now, just take note that HTML ignores new lines. Okay. So another way to do it is what we call the break element. Okay, the BR tag stands for break. How we use that is simple, just like this. Wherever we want a new line, we just type in BR. Oops. So BR, save it, and we will see. Sorry, wrong slide. And you'll see Chris is on a new line. But do you notice the difference between using a BR and a P tag? Okay, a BR tag essentially breaks it into a new line, and this line is very close to the previous line. Right? But a P tag actually has a bit of spacing, right, between the line, the paragraph that was before it and itself. So this has to do with how your browser styles paragraph. Because if you think about it in your reports and such, the division between paragraphs is pretty clear. You want people to know that I'm beginning on a new paragraph. One way to do that is to, in primary school you put 2 fingers and then you indent it by your fingers, right? HTML's way of doing that is to have more space between the 2 paragraphs. Okay, so just take note of this. There are 2 ways to do that, and BR is usually not the good way. Right, oops. Okay, BR is not the recommended way. Use p tags or other ways that we'll learn in the CSS workshop, CSS section later. So, okay. Okay, so just remove that. This is what our page currently looks like now. Okay, for when you're writing a report, sometimes you want to bold certain things, underline certain things, or italicize certain things. HTML started off as a way of sharing research papers, sharing reports. So they definitely have these ways of doing it. And how we do it is using special tags again. Okay, this is the EM tag. EM stands for emphasis. Okay, and it is quite cool because it doesn't say that I want to italicize this, or I want to bold this, or I want to underline this. It just says that I want to emphasize what is inside this tag. Okay, so the way we use it is, again, HTML is very simple. Let's say we want to emphasize this. Okay, we want to emphasize the word simple. Just place the word simple inside the emphasis tag. Oops, keep refreshing the wrong one. Okay, and you can notice a very small change here. I hope you all can see it. Okay, can you see the difference? Snowball is it's all normal, and then simple is italicized. Okay, so this is the behavior that I don't know who came up with. Okay, to say that when I want to emphasize something, I will display in italics. Okay, for all you know, emphasis could display in bright red text that blinks, but no, they decided that emphasis should be a very subtle slant to the text. Okay, the next tag that we want to learn is strong, and strong is really just short for a stronger emphasis. Can you guess what is the behavior of a strong? Bolded, right? Exactly. Okay. So no prizes for guessing how to use strong. So just the strong tag. Put the word inside the tag and refresh the page, and you see you're right, bolded. Okay, so these are just behaviors that they are determined by the working group or like by Firefox or Chrome. And really, you could change the way you want your emphasized or strongly emphasized text to look on your web pages using CSS. Okay, there is another way to specify whether you want to bold or italicize a certain piece of text. And the way to do that is using a tag, a very simple tag. Okay, I'll show you now. B for bold. Okay, whatever you want bolded inside the B tag. So I want to emphasize that no installation is required, and I'll put it inside the B tag, and the no is bolded. And similarly, I for italicize. Anything I want to italicize, put it in the I tag. Okay, so all these tags are chosen arbitrarily. Doesn't mean anything. Okay, so you see, I can force the browser to render the styling of the text by using the B and the I tag. Okay, because B stands for bold and I stands for italicized. But what we're moving towards, what the web is moving towards is away from the B and I tag. Okay, it's towards the emphasis and the stronger emphasis tag because it is more meaningful. It has more semantics. Okay, the B tag is essentially has to do with styling, and HTML is not about styling. HTML is a markup language. It describes the structure of a document. Okay, so what they're moving towards now is what they call semantic web. Okay, semantic just means meaningful. Okay, they want your HTML to be meaningful, which is why they want to specify that there's an emphasis rather than I want this text to be bolded, right? Emphasis could map to italicize. When you are creating an HTML page, it doesn't really matter. What you want to do is I want to say that this word should be emphasized, and it has repercussions in things like ebook readers as well. Okay, when you put an emphasis, the ebook readers, the program, the software might read it in a different manner. For example, okay, if I want to read no installation required, The ebook reader might just read no installation required. And if it's bolded, it doesn't know how do you read something in bold? You can't, right? But how do you read something that is emphasized? No installation required. Right? So this is a subtle meaning behind it. You don't really have to know, but it's good to know, okay? Moving on, nav, okay? We saw just now how many divs tags there are in a web page, okay? And slowly they are trying to move away from using so many div tags, okay? Because div really has no meaning, it's a container, right? What they introduced in HTML5, which is like the new version, the new standard for HTML, is this tag called nav. Nav stands for navigation, okay? As you are when you're browsing a website, you will come across navigation. Every website that has more than one page will have a navigation. And this tag essentially describes that this particular section has to do with navigation. Okay, so it's essentially like div. It's the same as div, but it's called nav. And it brings more meaning. When you have so many div, you have no idea whether this div is a navigation or is something else. But when you have a nav, you can kind of be sure that, okay, what is in this nav tag is likely to have to do with navigation. So the way we use that is simple. Okay, let's put this right at the top, right under the body, NAV tab, and you get your navigation. And because there's nothing inside, you won't see anything, right? You won't see anything. So let us make our navigation links. If you squint at a navigation list, if you squint at a navigation bar, it is really just a list of things, right? You want a link to somewhere, you want another link to somewhere, this link goes here, this link goes there. It is a list of links and it is an unordered list. Okay, in HTML there are two kinds of lists. An ordered list or an unordered list. And if you map it to the Microsoft Word world, it is just bullet points versus numbered points. Okay, for our navigation link, it is an unordered list, so we will use UL. Okay, an ordered list is just OL. Right, very simple. Go and export your own. Okay, right. So UL tab will give me this, and if we refresh the page, we will see no changes as well because the list is empty. There's nothing to display. What we want to do is add elements to the list, and that is done using the LI tag. I suppose LI stands for list index or something. Okay, so we'll just add a few items to your list. LI tag. So for me, I want my links to link to the different sections I have in my web page. So the first section is like the details. The second section is the installation, and the last section is the creator. Okay, so that is what I'm going to do. Okay, so I made a list of links. Okay, a list of items. They are not links for now. List of items. And if we try to see it, okay, cool. We have a list of items, but they don't do anything now. You can't click on them. They don't do anything. So that's what we're going to learn next. Okay, how to make this into links. Okay, the hyperlink. How do you link things? Is done using this A tag. I think A stands for anchor, correct me if I'm wrong. And to define where this link goes to, you use the href attribute. Okay, so for any piece of text or really any element, any div, any picture, if you want to make it a link, you just have to add this tag with the href attribute. Okay, and this hex here, okay, you can link to anywhere, but this hex here says that I want this link to link to something on this current web page. Alright, so let's try it and maybe you'll understand why. How do I supply text users? How do I select text and add a tag around it? Can I do that? You know? Like I want to add a tag around. You can do that in Vim, but it's okay. Okay, cool. So I type A, press that, and it comes up with this for me, href, for me to do something. For now, let's just illustrate how href can work. So if you want to link to, let's say, Google, okay, so let's just see this for demonstration purposes. You can see notice the differences in styling. Now it's blue and it's underlined. And if we click on it, oops. Okay, so there's a problem here, right? It links to /www.google.com. If you face this problem, what you need to do is just add a HTTP here, HTTP there, and it should work fine now. Okay, cool. So what is the difference? Why do I need to add a HTTP? Like I said, HTTP is the language, the protocol that your browser talks to the server. Okay, when you add in www.google.com, your browser thinks that this might be a file that is located here relative to my current file. Okay, so if I want to, I can link to another file that is on the same folder or a parent folder or whatever. So by adding the HTTP in front, I'm saying that this protocol HTTP should be used, which means that I have to go out and find google.com and then display it. Okay, but that's not what we want to do. We don't want to link to Google. We want to link to somewhere on web page. So what we want to do is this. Okay, so I created, excuse me, I wrapped these three words with the A tag, and they have href to hack something, hack something, hack something. Okay, so how do we actually, let's see if this works at all. So okay, we got links here. Now we have blue links that you can click, but they don't do anything, right? Like you see the page doesn't change. But notice, oops, my bad. Look at the URL. Okay, just take a look at the URL as I click. So I'm clicking on installation and you see it changes. I'm clicking on creators, it changes. Alright. So the hash of the web page changes, but the web page doesn't. You don't go anywhere with these links. What we need to do is, okay, what the hex means is that I will look for, on this page, I will look for something that has the identity details and I will jump to that part of the page. So we need to define an element that has an identity ID of details, and the way to do that is this, using the ID attribute. So let's define the ID attribute on the div. Simply go to the first div, the one that says snowball or your details of your project, and give it an ID. ID equals to details. Okay, ID equals to details. So you have just said that okay, this div should have an ID of details, and that is the usefulness of div. Now, if we go to our web page and we click details, you can see that nothing happens. The reason why nothing happens is because the web page is extremely short. There's no need to move anywhere to see the ID details. So maybe I want to just to illustrate. I want to make the web page a bit longer, so I can show you that it actually jumps to the correct ID. So don't follow along for this part. Okay, I'll just illustrate to you. So I can type extremely fast. So I can show you again. Okay, P. Oh shit. So I just type that like when you blink. Okay, so lorem is like a placeholder text people use in HTML, but please don't use it, it's ugly. Right, so let's try again. Okay, with all these placeholder text, I've made my web page much longer. And when I click on details, look, do you see jump? Yes, right? Let's try again, okay? Click on details, and it should jump up. This is the maximum that it can jump because my web page is only this long. Okay, if I add a lot more text, okay, so I have a lot more text now. If I click details, it should jump all the way up. Okay, so that's essentially what the href does when you have a hash in front of the ID. Okay, so let's remove all this rubbish. Okay, so we are back to this. Okay, so you're clear on href and anchor text. So you can define the ID on any element. It doesn't have to be a div. It could be a p as well, or an image for all you want. Okay, cool. This ID thing is pretty important, especially for CSS later. And right, what is the web without images? Okay, the web is primarily aim of the web now is really just to display images now. So let us add an image. Okay, you probably want a screenshot or like something that makes your website a lot nicer. So for mine, I use the for my project page, I use a screenshot of my game. So let me try and get it. Okay, you can use any image you want. I'll just use this for illustration. Oh, and comments in HTML is extremely difficult. It's less than, exclamation mark, dash dash, and close it with a dash dash, right angle. Okay, these are comments in HTML. Okay, so what you do, how you define an image is using the img tag, stands for image, img, and you give it a src, source, a source attribute. And the source attribute, the value of the source attribute is really just a URL to an image that exists on the web, or it could be a picture or an image that you have in your folder. So for this, I gave it a URL to a picture, which is this. It's a pretty big picture, so it might take a while. Okay, so this is the image. This is how my game looks like. And if you refresh this, you can see, okay, I have an image here. It's too big, but it's okay, it doesn't matter now. Okay, so that's how you define, how you add images to websites. Okay. Okay, so right, a big part of your project page might be a feedback form. Making web applications, you probably want to learn this because you will need to like ask for user registration, ID and stuff, or you might want to take in input from users. Okay, so this is the primary way of taking in input from users on the web on a website, which is a form. Okay, so a form. If you have been on HTML pages, you can see that a form has many elements. It has radio elements, so radio button, checkboxes, drop-down selection. Today we're just learning a very simple text field and submit button. Okay, so all the code for creating a form on your web page is just here, just a few lines. Okay, so let's try it now. So first we want a new div to modularize this thing. Okay, and in the div we have a form tag. Okay? And then to specify that I want a text field, is just input. Oops, doesn't work. And most forms attributes, most input elements have an attribute called name. So name is useful because when your form goes to your server can refer to these form elements with this name. Okay? To illustrate it very simply, okay, I'm going to show you how Google uses this attribute. Okay, so just we go to Google search, let's type in orbital. You can see this question mark, okay, Google is full of crap now. And you can see Q equals to orbital. Okay, essentially what this means is that there is a form, there's a form with a name Q, and it has the value orbital. So now you can kind of guess that, okay, maybe this form has this input and has the name Q, and the value of Q is orbital, which is really what it's doing now. So what's interesting about this is that I can use Google without going to their website. Okay, I can have a link that links to a search on Google by using this Q name. And how you want to do that is as such. So give the input name Q. Okay, let's see how it looks like now. Now we have a box. Okay, and have another input element that is the submit button. Okay, input type equals to submit. So why did you display submit query here? That's just the default text that Firefox uses when you don't have anything inside. Okay, if you want to change this, it's pretty easy. Just set another attribute that is called value equals to send, and now it's sent. Okay, so it's very simple. And the same can be done for your text view as well. Value equals to orbital, and it will be filled with the word orbital. Okay, so this is useful if you want, say, default values in the form. You want to make sure that the forms are not submitted with empty fields if the user accidentally clicks on something. So let's try this. If we click, what happens? Okay. When we click, nothing happens. We are still on the same page, but if you notice the URL has changed. We have a question mark and Q equals to orbital. So that's pretty similar to what we saw on Google's website just now, right? You have a Q, that is the name of the field, the input field, and the value is orbital. Okay? And the form doesn't do anything now, so we need to change that. We need to submit the query to Google's server instead of having it on our own website. The way to do that is we set a form action. Okay? This action attribute tells the browser that when I click on the submit button, the action I want to do is go to this website and throw in my form attributes and values. Okay? So it's easy. I just need to specify the action as Google's URL and everything should work. So let's take a look. Okay, so you see sublime text has auto completion for most of the attributes. Action equals to okay, so now I specify the action as Google's search URL. I refresh the page, send. Look, right? So that is how simple it is to, if you want to submit a Google search on your own website or you want to do other things. So how can you use this to your for your project? say you're running a web application and you are using Google App Engine, which we'll learn about later, and you have a URL for your website. So you can set the URL to your website and submit the necessary queries to it. So you can set your name to queue, and when you are programming your server, you can learn to accept this queue and then find the value, get the value, do something, and return the HTML page back to your users. So yeah, that could be useful for you if you're doing a web application. Cool. Okay, I hope this is simple. All right. If we look at our form now, it's pretty bare. Like, okay, what is this? What does this send to? What is this field doing? What am I sending? Okay, what am I supposed to fill here? Is it my email? Is it a query? So I want something to describe what this text field is about. Okay, if you have made purchases online, like on Amazon, they will tell you, okay, your first name, last name, address line 1, address line 2, blah blah blah. Okay, what we need actually are labels. Okay, the way we define label is extremely simple. Just wrap the input inside a label tag. Okay, like this. So I have a form, create a label tag. Okay, put this input inside the label and just have the label. So for example, this I want this to be your search query. Okay. So this input and the words are inside this label. And if we see, this is now this text field has a search query. Okay. What is useful about this is this. Okay. You could not use you could have used a p tag or some other tag to do this. For example, I could have just done this. Right? It's almost the same, right? So it works, everything works, right? But look at this, when I click here, it is selected as a text. But if I use label, so now I'm using labels. Oops, what do I do? But if I use label, and I click here, look, the text field is selected. So this is my biggest nuisance when I'm using forms on a website, when companies don't use label, especially when they're using radio buttons and you feel like you're playing a sniper in Team Fortress. You gotta aim for the little radio button and click, click, click. If they have used label instead, you can click on the text and the radio button is selected, which is so much simpler. Okay, this is a whole different topic on usability, and that's something you should take note of in your web applications. Okay, the little thing counts. The little things count. Okay, so this is what a label is. And so I have a lot more stuff here. I'll just copy it in, basically to illustrate to you another kind of input that we have, and it's called a text area. So if you're having a feedback form, I'm just changing the action so that clicking on the button doesn't send me to Google. So change the action to feedback. Let's say I want the email. Change the name to something that makes more sense, such as email. Remove the default value of the input, and I'll have a new label and a text area for actually taking in the comments. Okay, if you take a look at how our website looks like now, it's like this. Okay, so I have a text area that is, I did make it bigger. Okay, so I can make it bigger or smaller. Okay, but there are attributes that I can set to make this non-resizable as well. Okay, so for example, I wanna set a default, say rows and columns. I just have to set it in terms of attributes. Okay, cool. So now I have the word comments. There is part of the label, which is for the text area, and I want my text area to have 10 rows and 50 columns by default. So it looks like this. Cool. Okay. Alright, so if I just type things in, and I press send, it gives me a bad web page because it doesn't know what feedback is. Feedback doesn't exist. Okay, but if you have given Google's URL, you have seen that these attributes are there. Okay, so what else do I have for you there? Right, and something very useful is this attribute called required. Okay, required, it really does what you think it does. It makes sure that this view is not empty. So the way we use that is, it is an attribute that has no value. So just say required. And now, if my comment is empty, and I press send, right? Do you see this? It's pretty cool, right? So it will not allow you to send empty text. So by default, HTML5 has already given you some error handling, some way to handle errors. Okay. So this is something new. I think all browsers should support it now. It's been around for a while. Other things that you can do is this. You can use a placeholder. Okay, placeholder is a not very new thing anymore. It's actually a placeholder is something that is shown when the field is empty. Okay, so what we did just now was we set a default value using the value attribute as such. Okay, so what we did was this. Okay, so it has a default value of this, your email. What placeholder does is this. Okay, so sorry, if I had forgotten to enter my email and I have some random comment and I press send, it will successfully send this, despite the email being a rubbish value. It's a default value that I have set. Okay, what is better? What is a better way to do this is to use a placeholder. A placeholder is essentially, you can think of it as an instruction to tell the user what this field should contain. Okay, so I just change the value to placeholder, and I should see this. You see? This is no longer text that I can select. It is just it is styled to show the user what this field is supposed to contain, and when I type, it disappears. Okay, and when it's empty, it's shown to kind of like tell the user what this is about, what this field is for. Cool. Okay. Anything else? Okay, so a placeholder for the comments area. Okay, so something happened there. Uh, like when this was my text area, my placeholder didn't turn out right. Okay, the reason is because there's blank spaces here. So now you know text area is what is inside the text area is not is white space aware. So whatever white space I have inside my text area is considered to be the value of the text area. So if I have words here, it will appear in my text area as well. So just think of that when you are using text area, okay? It shouldn't have any spaces inside. So like this. Okay, so now I have my placeholder. Okay, I have some references here. So if you go to the URL with the slides, you can look at this reference. The first reference is Mozilla Developer Network's HTML element reference. It has all the HTML tags, and you can see there are quite a number. You probably wouldn't use all of them. This tags that have the 5 beside it means that it's a HTML5 technology, and means that not all browsers will support it, but most of the modern browsers should already support it. Only problem is maybe mobile. Okay, so just take note of that when you are doing that, but it shouldn't be too big of a problem. And the next tag is this is a very interesting tutorial that I went through while preparing for this. It teaches you how to use HTML5 technology to make forms look nicer. For example, you can specify new input types. Okay, this is extremely useful for mobile users. So if you specify the input type as I think a telephone number or email address, this keyboard on iOS will pop up. So this keyboard has the @ symbol because emails all have the @ symbol, so it lets you type things more quickly rather than going to extra symbols. And if you specify the input type as number, your keypad will come out, right? Because you are only allowing numbers, so this will come out. And other attributes include other input types include date. Then your date picker will come up for Android. Or yeah, you can see there's a whole range of new input types that are available. It has validation packed in, so you could specify a regex pattern so that your HTML itself can determine whether it's a valid input or not. Yeah, so okay, so you can just read these references yourself. It might come in useful for your website. And yeah, so that's it for HTML. What time is it? Okay, we are on time. So we'll just take a quick break for maybe 5 minutes. If you have questions about HTML, just feel free to come down and ask me about it. If not, I'll see you back in 5 minutes and we'll continue with making this website look a bit nicer. Okay, so yeah, go ahead for a break.
And we're gonna cover CSS as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, after this.
Okay.
Okay, so if you need to download anything, the slides, everything is on this URL. Okay, the slides are all there. So just head to this URL and download whatever you need.
What's up?
I was trying to download for blankets, but I got an error by Quickie that you cannot download it through Sandbox environment browser or something.
You got an error from who? Sorry?
Quickie.
Quickly.
Yeah, like okay, I pressed the run button, and then like I got a window on the top.
What platform are you using?
Windows.
Windows.
Just some quick announcements while we have a break. Hopefully you have all your considerations for partners done. So if you still haven't had a partner for Orbital, please do go to Piazza and look at the team partner finding cards. I think we may have a couple people in the room that may not have partnership. There are actually some people away from NUS or overseas who are still looking for partners. You can imagine how hard it is for them to find a partner too, so you can reply to their partner requests on Piazza. Okay. I will be sitting in the front during this entire process, so if you have any questions, you can put them on Piazza. You can follow up on the post that I made on Zahan's tutorial, and then I'll try to get to you.
Yeah, what's up?
How to insert Chinese characters into face. This into the my web page and save it. This is like
I think
different
it has
characters.
to do with your default.
Sorry, how do you do
Because your the default font doesn't support
this is for the Chinese character.
I think something like that.
But
Your encoding. You do your encoding. So let me look at something. Browser settings. I think you need to do a search for it. I'm not too sure. Yes, it's to do with some encoding thing. Like you need to set it to be a encoding that recognizes UTF-8. Okay, so I think you need to search for how to set your Chrome to display Chinese characters. Because the default font might not display. So the font that you uses on the web page is different from the font that your computer uses for your. Yeah, so you maybe have to find like a set Chrome to use another font that has Chinese characters. Okay, yeah, that should be
Alright, welcome back. Okay, we are running a bit late, so I'm gonna speed up a bit, okay? For this. Okay, cool. So the next part, so since we have a bit of time, can I have a show of hands? Who thinks I'm going too fast? Am I going too fast? Okay, too slow? Just right? Okay, excellent. I see one guy nodding furiously in the middle. Thank you. Okay, so right, the next part is what is a bit more interesting. So far we have been seeing black and white and blue and underlines. Okay, it's a bit boring. So the next thing that we're going to learn is called CSS, and CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. Right? If you think of HTML as the bare bones, the structure, HTML is really the beautiful skin that is on top of HTML. And beautiful is emphasized here, you can see. Beautiful is emphasized here because beauty is in the eyes of the beholder, right? And what I mean by that is that you have websites that look like this. Okay? This website is at the world's worst website ever.com and is intentionally created to showcase how bad a website can be. Okay, bad colors, no flash, random dotted borders, and bad typography, or rather no typography at all. So you have extremely ugly websites like this, and you have extremely beautiful websites like this. Okay, I love this website. It's Polygon. Okay, Polygon.com is it's like Kotaku, Paper Shotgun. It's a gaming website, reviews, news, and stuff. And I personally find this website extremely attractive. Okay, let's just take a look at how these sites look like. Oops. So this is the world's worst website. And it's worse when you are not looking at the image. It has blinking stuff, site is under construction. I'm not sure if you all are the same generation as mine. Like last time when you go to GeoCities and then you have the construction banner and it says this site is under construction. And then you have blinking marquee, look, marquee, fancy marquee. And yeah, bad website. And you have, oops. And you have really nice website like this. Okay, let's take a look at one of the feature article in Polygon. So these are things that you can do with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So this is a feature article. It has to do with jumping platformer games and the trends. So like as you scroll, you get very nice typography. You get this. Wow, you see that? Look, Mario is jumping. Okay. So it's quite interesting, right? As you scroll, he jumps. Look. All this is possible with HTML, JavaScript. See, now I got your attention, right, by showing you this. Okay, so these are things that you can do on a website, nice typography, beautiful colors, interactive images, animated images, slideshow, interactive slideshow, you can click through, and yeah, lots of other stuff, yeah, comments, blah, 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 okay. So these are examples of what is possible on a website. So just to stir a bit of your imagination of what is possible for your project website. It's really how much you want to learn, how much effort you want to put in. Okay, so what I love about CSS is that it's extremely learnable. Okay, you can go to any website, fire up your inspector, and just tweak any CSS value that you want to see. For example, Control Shift C brings up my inspector, and I can select any element that I want. So for example, I want to select this, just the background, and I want to set the background to something. Okay, the way to do that in CSS, you all don't have to follow along, I'm just showing you how easy it is to use this. Ta-da. That's all. That's all you have to do to learn CSS. Right, I can set it to any color, pink, dark, gray. So it's easy, right? You can just fire out inspector and change any attribute. So let's say I want to change. Okay, I kind of like this website, but I think the background is a bit ugly. The background. I want to change the background. Control Shift C. Select like the biggest element. Okay, this body background is this. You can edit HTML within this inspector as well, but the HTML persists locally. Okay, it's not on their servers or what. So I remove the background. It's not white, and I can set the background to be background color yellow. Right, so much more beautiful. Right. Okay, so you can do this on any website as long as you have an inspector. So you have inspector on Chrome, on Firefox. I'm not too sure about IE, but probably as well. And the way you do CSS on HTML, what you do is you just define a HTML text on a HTML file, and you can just open it. Right? The way you can define CSS, there are three ways. The first way is what we call inline CSS. Okay, inline CSS basically just means define CSS inline with your HTML, inside your HTML file. The second way is a style tag, and the last way is an external file, external style sheet file, .css file. We'll go through this. We'll go through the first two, okay? Because it's the easiest way to see changes. And what I have shown you is just the background color. It's the most obvious way to see if your changes are actually valid or not. Okay, so I have my file opened. Sorry, this file open, and this file currently looks like this. Okay, this is the file that we worked with just now. And for example, if I want to change the background color, I can just edit it within the HTML file using this style equals to, and I set background color to yellow, semicolon. Okay, this is the easiest way to set CSS for something, for a div or any tag. Cool. So it's background dash color colon yellow semicolon, all inside a style attribute. And what you should see is that it's yellow. Yay! Your first CSS. Right? It's quite ugly, right? So I kind of have like a nice background color that I like, and it is this hex. DD. And it's a nice light gray. Yeah, I kind of like this color. So as you can already tell, I'm not very good with colors, right? And so I have a few resources that I use to pick colors. The first of which is called colorlovers.com. Sounds cheesy, but it's pretty good. So what you have here is user submits palettes or patterns or what, and then you can just, maybe I like this, this theme, this palette. I just click it and then I can choose whatever color I want and I can use it. Okay, this is pretty good. What I like more is this Adobe Cooler. So this is available at cooler.adobe.com. Kuler. It's essentially a pimped up color picker. I usually just go to explore. I think most popular because I'm not hipster enough, and then I'll just like find okay, which one is nice? Okay, maybe this info. Then you see this brilliant person has come up with 5 colors that actually look quite nice together, and I can just pick any one of them. So let's say I want this. Oh, sorry. What is the edit? Okay, click edit, and then I have all these values here, right? And I can just copy this hexadecimal value. So a hexadecimal value is how you describe a color in HTML. There are other ways as well, but this is by far the most common. Copy it, go back here, and change this. Oops. Okay, and yeah, I've got a color here. Okay, so it's as simple as that, really. So cooler.adobe.com, that's like one of the best websites I have for choosing colors. Besides background color, there are other things that you can do with CSS. Okay, but the first thing that we need is a logo. And due to my poor design skills, I'm just going to use text as my logo. Okay, just key in some random words for your logo. And because we want to be able to style things easily, we will have everything inside a header tag. So this header tag is different from what we learned just now, H1, H2, H3. This header is what describes the top part of your website. So if you see, let's go back to Cooler. Okay, so Cooler has this thing that persists on top, this navigation bar that persists at the top of every web page, every page that they have. Okay, so this is what we call the header as compared to the footer. Do they even have a footer? Oh shit, infinite scroll. Okay, so this is the header, and that's what we're gonna do. So we have a header tag. Header tag. And what we want inside the header is our logo. And our navigation. Okay, so note the changes. What we have inside the header is our div, which is our logo, and our navigation links. Okay, cool. You're okay with this? Inside the header, you have your div with the logo and as well as your navigation. Okay, and let's take a look at how our page looks like now. So this is our page. Okay, I have the logo and I have the navigation. It's all in the header, but there's no difference because header is essentially a div with a nice name. What we want to do now is we want the logo to be at the center. Okay, the way we do that is pretty simple. We use this text align center. It does what you think it does. It aligns text to the center. Okay, so it looks like this now. Now you have your logo in the center. Yay! Okay, now you know how to center things. Maybe the next thing you want to do is you want to center the navigation links as well, and you can do that the same way using text align center on the UL, on the unordered list. Okay, so it's just the same thing. I'm just gonna copy. Alright, just set the same style for yourself, and you can see all our links are centered as well. Okay, but that's not very nice. I think the bullet points are a bit annoying. Right? Do you see any navigation that has bullet links nowadays? No, right? It's quite ugly. Like we want it's an unordered list, but we really want it to be a navigation link, not with bullet points. And we can remove them easily using this list style type none. This just means that there is no styling for my list, my bullet points. Remove it. Okay. So in the same attribute, the style attribute, list style type none. And it's gone. Simple, right? So then there are other more styles that you can choose, but I don't really know all of them. You can explore online, but what we want to do is just remove it, so we just set it to none. And okay, so the links are now one above, one below the another, and perhaps we want to move it to be side by side. And one way we can do that is setting this attribute. We can set the display to be inline block. Okay, remember just now I briefly mentioned that a paragraph is a block element. So a paragraph, by a block element, it means that when your browser is trying to render and display every element in the HTML file, a block element takes up the entire width of the page. Okay, so maybe I can just illustrate this. So for example, if this is your web page, okay, a block element takes up the entire width. So even if your text is just like ABC, is a very short text, it takes up the entire page width. So when I have my next paragraph, it will appear here. Okay, so what we're doing here is we are setting it to inline block. Okay, you don't need to know the details about this, but what essentially it does is that it says that my block, okay, will only take up the space that it requires. So it becomes like this instead, A, B, C, like that. And my next inline block element will be able to fit in here. Okay, so this is exactly what is with our list now, when it's one above the other. And what we want to change is to be side by side. So the way we do this is to add CSS styles to each of the link. Okay, so I've just added this style equals to display colon inline block to each of the list, the li elements. And sure enough, you will see that it's now side by side. But you can kind of like see where this is going, right? It's very annoying if I want to style each of my links. I have to go to each of my links and add in the new style. What if I add another link? What if I add a new link to my navigation? And then I will have to copy all the styles again. And when I change one of the style, I have to change all of them. So it is annoying, right? And programmers are lazy, we don't want to copy and paste and do all these stupid things and repeat. What we have is a much simpler way, and we can do that using CSS selectors. Okay, selectors are basically you can use selectors to select by ID, by class, by tag name. Okay, and we will illustrate that in a short while. The first thing you need to do is you want to create a style tag. Okay, now we are moving to using style tag. Instead of having inline CSS, which means that we define CSS as an attribute, Okay, see, CSS as a style attribute in each of the elements in HTML, we want to move all these styles to a centralized location, which is the style tag. And the style tag appears in your head. Okay, so style. Okay, create a new style tag under head, and we will slowly move everything to the style tag. So the first thing we want to move is the background color. Okay, so the easiest way to use CSS selectors is just to say the tag name. Okay, so body just refers to the HTML element body, and you're adding the following CSS styles, which is the background color. Okay, so it looks like this. So body, curly brace, close curly, and add in whatever styles you want here. So we want to add in background color, and we want it to be hex E0F, right? And this shouldn't bring any change to our website because yeah, it's still there. And if we remove the style attribute from the body element, it should still look the same because we already defined. Okay, so it's still the same because what we have done is basically move the styling into the style tag. That's it. Okay, so slowly one by one we'll move everything into the style tag. So that's the simplest way to select. You can select any HTML elements using this. So in the same manner, you can select your nav, UL, or your header in this way. But if you want to be more precise, you can select using class. Okay, a class just represents a category of things. For example, if we want to give a class to our logo, the keyword here is class. Okay, so we can give a class to our logo and we can style it using this class selector. And a class selector looks like this. It begins with a full stop, dot logo, and we can set the text align to center. And then when we remove this from the HTML, okay, you can see nothing changes because we have just been moving stuff around. Okay, and the next thing we want to do is move the UL and the list. Okay, so this is getting a bit long drawn. I'll just copy it in. And so because I have it inside the style tag, I can remove all these styles from my UL. Oops. Alright, so I hope you appreciate how much simpler this is. Okay. And one problem with doing this is if you are using UL and LI to select things to style, what do you think will happen if we have another list somewhere in the page? So for example, if I want our the creators' names to be here, I could have another unordered list with two elements and so I have another list somewhere in the page and I have two elements. So that's my name and my friend's name. And you notice that they are styled the same way. But I don't want this to happen. I want this to be displayed in terms of bullet point, but I want this to be displayed in terms of a navigation, so a side-by-side link. So how do I do that? I can use a more specific selector. Okay, so I can specify I want to go to nav to find a UL and style it in this manner, rather than style all the UL in this manner. Okay, so selectors can think of it as being more specific. I can zone in on a particular element. So let's do that. So under UL, I just want the UL in my nav tag to be styled this way, and I want the list elements inside a nav to be styled that way. If I want to be more specific, I can say that I want the list to be inside a UL, so that any ordered list will not be styled this way. So you can be as specific as you want, and it helps to be specific because you will avoid unnecessary stylings to elements that you don't want. So this should work. Okay, so you see, the navigation lists are styled, but this link at the bottom isn't because it is not in a navigation tag. Cool. Okay. All right. So the next challenge that we have is we want the logo. So the logo is now a block element. We want the logo to be on the left of these links, and that brings us to the topic of floating and CSS box model. So if you inspect each of these elements, okay, for example, let's say we inspect this. This is a header tree, a H tree. Okay, and I can view the box model, and it will tell me the width and the height of this box model. So everything HTML is displayed as a box. So it's called a box model. Every element is actually it starts out as a box. And the way we can kind of break the layout of HTML to ask it to lay out in a different manner is by using float. Okay, the float CSS attribute. So a float essentially tells the browser that I want this element to float to the left. Okay, squeeze it to the left as much as possible and make it an inline block element rather than a block element that takes up the entire width. Okay, I think it's best to see this in action. So what we do is give our logo a float value of left. So now this logo will float to the left. Okay, so you see the difference? Now our logo is on the left, and because it is now styled as an inline block element, because it's floating, our links have space to move up to the same level as our logo. Okay, and let's add a bit more styling to our logo. Let's make the text a bit bigger. And we can make our text bigger using this setting font size. Okay. If we set the font size to this, you can see our logo is huge now. And similarly, you can float left, you can also float right. So if we want our links to float to the right, there you go. So now the logos float all the way to the left and our links float all the way to the right. Okay, so it takes up the entire page. And so we can really just remove this text align equals to center now because we are just floating to the left. Okay, so what is the problem here? Do you notice that there's an issue here? This snowball is in a very awkward position. It's like the logo and the links are lovers and the snowball is trying to intercept. You see? So there's a problem with using float. Okay, the browser tries to squeeze as many elements as it can into the space that's available after you have floated the elements. And the way to solve this is using what we call a clear fix. This is, you need to understand a bit more about how layout works to understand why we have this problem and how to solve this problem. But I'm just telling you because you might face this problem when you are doing your websites. And this is the quick way to solve this, okay? You just need to use a clear both attribute on the content that you want to go below the floated elements. Yeah, I hope I'm not confusing you. So let's just do this to make it look nicer. First of all, we need to wrap everything that we want to be below the floated elements in a div. So I have the header, and I want everything to be that is not a header to be called content. So I make a new div that wraps all my other div that are details and installation and stuff. Okay, so div content, div action feedback. So I just make a new div to wrap everything. Okay, so now content contains my details, installation, creators, and feedback. Okay, and now I add a clear fix to the content. The way you select a ID is using the hash. Okay, so content clear both. And now it's fixed. Okay? So this is how, if you are floating elements and you see that you have a problem with the layout, you need to set a clear both or clear left or clear right. Okay? The intricacies of this you have to explore on your own. Okay, I don't have time to explain it for now. Okay, the next problem that we observe is that maybe our links are a bit too close together. We want them to spread out a bit more. We want them to take up more space. And the way we can do that is using something, what we call margins. Okay, if we explore the box model a bit more, it actually will display your margin as you hover over this, okay? So when you hover over this 362 times 19, it says content. And then what you have after that is padding. After padding is the border, you don't see the border, yeah, borders. And outside that is the margin. So this is the box model of CSS. For each element you have your content, you can have padding before the border, and you can have a margin that is outside of the border. So it's like a space, a wall that you set up to ask other elements to get out, okay, to move away from you. So we can do that with our list elements by setting a margin. Oh, okay. So I already set a margin. So I'll let you see without the margin. Okay, so this is without the margin. You can see it's pretty cramped up here, right? So we can set a margin left, means that I want a margin on the left only. And you have this. Okay, all cool? So I can set other margins as well, margin top, bottom, right. It's just, yeah, you can just set it wherever you want, whatever you think looks nice. So the difference between a padding and a margin, okay, sorry. The similarity between the padding and the margin is that you can move things around. The difference is where this space comes from. A padding is space that you get from your element, and the margin is the space that is outside the element. Okay, it's as you build more websites, you will kind of get the idea. But for now, you can just think of it as one is part of the element and another is not part of the element. So a padding is part of the element. And our problem here that we're trying to solve is that this logo and everything else is very close to the edges of the web page. And this is something you don't see very often in web pages. There's always a bit of breathing space. So the way we want to do that, we want to solve that is by giving a padding to our container element. Okay. So again, we are going to use divs. We're going to wrap everything inside a div. So that includes the header and the content. So make a new div. Give it an ID of container. And essentially the container really is just a container. It is to contain all your content. This is a very common practice on websites. Most of the time you see that you always have a div that has an ID of container. And this should close just before the body. Okay? So now if you take a look at the layout of our page, you have an ID, you have a div container, and inside this container you have a header and a content div. And inside the content div is all your content. The details, installation, creators, and feedback. Okay, so this is the structure that we have now. And now we want to give a padding to container. So the selector for ID again is the hash container. And we can give it a padding. So again, similar to margin, we can give it a padding left, right, top, bottom, but a shorthand for this is just a keyword padding. And we can give it 1, 2, or 4 values. If we give it one value, let's say 10 EM, it applies the padding to in all four directions. So it looks like this. Okay, so a padding at the top, at the left, at the right, and at the bottom of the page. If we provide it with 2 values, okay, the first value refers to the top and bottom. The second value refers to the left and the right. So the top and the bottom has a padding of 10 EM. Okay, whereas the left and the right has a padding of only 1 EM. So you can see the difference here. Okay, so the point here is that a lot of shortcuts exist for CSS. Okay, and you have to learn them on your own to make life a bit easier. Whether it's much better than specifying padding left, right, top, bottom. Okay, it's easier to just specify padding and then give it as many values as you require. So in this case, I feel that we only want padding top. So let's just give it padding top 3 EM. Okay. So I think this is good enough. I'm going to leave it at this for now. Alright, the next thing I want to do is to make fonts bigger. I've already made my font logo bigger, sorry. I want to change the color a bit. So I've chosen a very nice color here. I think it's green. I don't know. And yeah, let's see what color it is. And specifying a font color is simple because that's what a lot of people like to do. Is just this color. Okay, one mistake beginners might make is that they think color is the background color, but that's wrong. Background color is background color. Color is the font color. Okay, so just set the font color to anything you like, and let's see what color this is. Okay, it's a green. So I can change the color of any text that I want in this web page using my CSS selector. And for font as well, there are many things that you can set. You can set font size, font color, font family, or like the font type. So there's a shorthand for font as well. So basically, the format is as such: the size, the font family, and some other attributes that I cannot remember right now. So we can just try doing that. So for this, I want my links to look a bit bigger, and yeah, I also want it to be of a different color. So under nav ulli, nav ul, I will set the font to be 1.3 em, and the color and the font family to be sans serif. Okay, so I've made it bigger, and it's actually already sans serif. So let me set it to serif to illustrate the difference. Okay, hang on. Why doesn't it change? Okay, I have no idea why it's not displaying serif, but doesn't matter. That's not important. The important thing is web fonts. Okay, this is a emerging trend. It's not really emerging. A lot of people are doing it now. Is to use web fonts. So when you set a font, so let's say I want to set my font to let's say I want to set my font family to Helvetica. What do you think happens when your user does not have the font Helvetica? The browser again will not display an error. It will try its best to find out some way of displaying certain fonts. And to prevent people from breaking, for example, if I want to set Helvetica, I should set a backup font for this. So a lot of computers have Arial. So I'll set Arial as a backup font. So if you cannot find Helvetica, I'll use Arial. And if you cannot find Arial, I don't care. I just want a sans serif font. And so apparently I have Helvetica, I think. Okay, so a cool thing about this inspector is that it can show you what font it's using. So I don't have Helvetica, so it has used Arial instead. Okay, so that's a good practice. It's good practice to set backup fonts. So if you don't have the font that you want, choose a more common second font, and then choose like a default, not really default, a class of fonts that you want to use. So the system will determine what is a suitable sans serif font or serif font or the monospace font. So the problem that web fonts aims to solve is that I can host fonts on the internet, and I can, using CSS, bring the font and display it on your website without you having to install anything at all. And it is actually very simple to use. So a very good way, a canonical way of getting web fonts is through Google Web Fonts. Okay, google.com/fonts. And they actually provide a lot of different fonts. So you can slowly scroll, you can choose the font that you like, and using this quick use button, they will just let you select what kind of fonts, what font weights you would like, and you can just follow the instructions and use this. Okay? Essentially, to distill it down, what you just need to do is copy this link inside. Copy this link inside your head. I mean inside the head element, not inside your head. Okay, so copy this link, and it works like a CSS. It's just your web page. When you visit a web page, it's just putting down this font from Google Fonts, and then you can use it. The font that I've put down is called PT Sans. Okay, it's a very nice sans serif font that I like, and I'm just gonna use it for my entire page. So I will set it inside body because body is like the overarching container for everything. So the way I set it is using font family. Okay, the problem here is that PDSense has a space, and because it has a space, I need to quote it in single quotes. Okay, so I hope you notice the differences in the fonts. If you want to make sure, you can just inspect it, this particular paragraph, and then the fonts, PDSense. So you can do this with any kind of font. So I prepared a very nice font called The font is called Tangerine. Okay, so you can see it's very simple. You can embed like 1,000 fonts inside, but it will make your page load a lot longer. So it's not recommended to have more than 2 or 3 different kind of fonts inside your web page. So if I want Tangerine is a serif font, it's a cursive serif font, and I want I want my logo to be serif. So the way I do it is, this font family is Tangerine. I don't need to code it because Tangerine is a single word, no spaces inside, so you wouldn't have any trouble doing that. And yep, this is how Tangerine looks like. Cursive fonts. So it's good. It's always good practice to specify backup fonts. So if I don't have a Tangerine on my computer, if the loading of this font fails for some reason, I can specify another serif font to replace it. So it's always good practice to do this. Okay, so this is sufficient. Alright, so Google Web Fonts, go and check it out. Okay, the next problem we have, or rather, the next thing I don't like about this web page is that it is very wide. Okay, if you read a bit about usability, they say something about how long text is very difficult to read. So imagine if you have a line of text that is like 20 words long, it's very difficult to continue reading. Okay? As you reach the end of the line, it takes a lot of effort to jump to the next line. So it is recommended that web pages not be too long. And that's a problem today because your screen size are getting bigger. And that makes your web page extremely wide. So a way to solve that is by setting a width on your container element. And by that I mean using this max width attribute. So max width is really what it says it does. It sets the max width of the browser, of the window, of the web page to be whatever you want it. So it can go smaller, but it can never be bigger. So this ensures that your website never stretches too wide. So just add in the attribute. So you have max width and you have max height as well if you want to set it. So max width, just arbitrarily 760 pixels. So specifying by pixels is another problem altogether, and you have to read about it to understand like what is really a pixel on HTML, and it has to do with some calculations. Okay. So I just want it to be small enough and you can see that actually my links jumped to the left. That's because my container is now only this big. Can you see? Can you see the dotted lines? This highlights my container. My body is still the maximum height and width, but my container is only part of this. And so it's quite ugly for it to be left centered, for it to be aligned to the left. And now I want to center everything. And there's a pretty easy way to do this. Oops. Okay, there's a pretty easy way to do this, is using this auto value for margin. Because I have already specified a width for my container, the browser knows how much width it will take. And so by specifying auto, the browser knows how much margin that the container element can be given, which is as much as possible. Okay, like remember when I told you about padding, I told you that if you give it 2 elements, it will use the first 2 for the top and bottom, and the next value for the left and right. So now I'm telling the browser to lay out such that values given for the left and right margin are equal. So that's essentially what auto does. Okay, and so margin 0px auto. And yep, that's all it does. Sets margin automatically to the left and the right, and your website is centered. Okay, I'm going to change the background because I don't like the color. Okay. So the last thing that I find annoying is this: my links. They are underlined and they are purple. And I think that's ugly. Okay, a lot of websites that you visit now do no longer have the default look for links like the blue underline and a visitor link appears as a purple underline. So there are ways to change this as well. And for that, you have to know something called pseudo selectors. So pseudo selectors are selectors for elements that are not there all the time. Kind of, okay? So a pseudo selector that you might be interested in is this hover. So a hover pseudo selector is activated when you hover over a link. Okay, for example, this is a normal link, but when I hover over it, it becomes a hover. So it becomes a pseudo element. Alright, so let's apply some stylings to it. Okay, I'm just going to copy all this in because it's very tedious to type. And you will see the differences in a moment. Okay, so what I'm doing here is that I'm specifying that any A tag that is a link, which is really every link, is given this color. And the text declaration none just means that I don't want to underline it. Okay? And a border, I want to give it a border at the bottom. Okay, if we can just remove this so you can see the difference. So now, like I said, I have removed the underline. Okay? And what do I do? And I set a color. Oh, the color doesn't work. Okay, let's look at the border. So I want to set the border to a dotted line. Okay, can you see? So I just set the border to be this width, dotted, and of this color. So this again is a shorthand. You could specify like border bottom style, border bottom width, but I decided to use this shorthand because it's easier to type. Okay, this width is the width of the border. So if I want, I can set it to be a very big border. Okay, so you can see the width is not very big, so I cannot display a lot of dots. Oops. Okay, so this is a good width. Hover effects happen, like I say, when you hover over certain things. So what I did was, when I hover over certain things, I want it to be highlighted green, and I want the dots to disappear. So that is what actually I'm specifying. Okay, and the reason why this is still purple, even though I wanted it to be green, is because this is a different pseudo selector. I have already visited these links. So this is under the pseudo selector. A visited. Okay, so if I specify the same things, all these links become styled the same way. Okay, so the reason I can explain is because these are different kind of links. They are links that have not been visited. Okay, to illustrate this difference a bit more, I'm going to do something like this. So I'm going to change back A visited to be the normal, the purple ugly one, but I'm going to add in a new link. So I have a new link, hi, and it's green is because it has not been visited. So it's given the styling. It's given the styling of a link here. Okay, so this means that you can style visited links differently from links that have not been visited. But that's not a very common pattern that I see on the web. Usually they just give the same styling for both kind of links, and that's what I'm going to do here. So yeah, that's what I want to do for links. There are different kinds of, there are many different kinds of pseudo selectors around. including this thing called nth child. So that might be useful if you have a list. So the nth child selects the nth child, and you can specify I want the every second child. So it selects every even element. This is useful if you have a list of things and you want to style the even elements differently from the odd elements. Okay, but this you have to explore it on your own as well. And that's all for CSS. So the resources that I have, again, Mozilla Developer Network. This is a very awesome resource because it lists all your CSS attributes here. You can see there are a lot of attributes. Okay, and certain things are not available on all browsers, so you have to be careful about it. And you can it has tutorials, it has references on how to select certain elements as well. So for example, it tells you that the dot selects class and the hex selects ID and stuff like that. So yeah, explore your own. My recommendation is not to go through this list exhaustively. You'll die of boredom. But it is to figure out what you kind of need. Okay, for example, if I want to make a button round, Google that, look for a tutorial. How do I make my buttons round using CSS? Follow that tutorial and look at the attributes that it refers to. And then after that, look at this reference to learn more about the attribute or the CSS style. And the next reference is, yeah, Google Web Fonts is a pretty awesome resource that you can get a lot of fonts available. And that's it for this section. I think Prof has some announcements to make.
Okay, first I have a big announcement to make. That is to thank Zaan for giving this presentation on HTML and CSS. Let's give him a round of applause. So if you do really well at Orbital, we'll invite you to come back and do something like this as well. We're going to start with Git in a couple minutes, so we're going to just take a 5-minute break. We had supposedly had an hour to do slide preparation and brainstorming. I hope you're doing that already with your partners. Some of you have already sent in slides. I'm going to take a couple minutes here just to set up a short presentation about what you should be doing for that.
Sorry, I'm taking so long.
No, it's okay. Your Git part, is it going to take about an hour?
No. I'll try and go through it in 15 minutes because there's not much to do.
Okay.
Unless, do you want them to try everything? Because
You can take up until 12. I'm going to take about 5 minutes.
Okay, sure. Thank you. Sorry about the.
No. It's good. I just want to remind them that it's
Okay.
Sorry, is the participation? It's graded in the sense that your peers will look at it and check whether you participated. It's not graded in the sense that if you do something wrong on there or you ask a question that other people think is stupid or something, it's not graded.
I mean, we can figure out what the
Yeah, you can post it as an answer. A lot of people on Stack Overflow do that. They'll post a question and they're like, oh, never mind, I figured it out. And then they'll write their answer as a response.
I'm assuming we have to take
Yes, you will. We'll go over that in the project evaluation instruction.
If we have already done something, how do we, what's the focus?
Yeah, I'll show you this afternoon.
Okay. Okay, so hi everyone. I'm using Zan's laptop for this. So originally we had this session. It's going to spill over. We're not going to actually have it. We're going to make sure you get lunch, right? You guys are all hungry. So there is a document that is not populated yet. You will see it later in the afternoon. So while you're doing Google App Engine, I'll ask you to check this location. I'll post it on Piazza later. Okay. Basically, what it has is this is a link to a Google spreadsheet because I think for some reason Google gives you extremely long URLs, so it's useless. But later on, there will be a second tab here that will have all the information that I have about your names, your teams, your level of achievement, and whether I've received everything for you for Ignition or not. All right, and whether you're going to take mentorship as part of Apollo 11. So all the teams that are not doing Apollo 11, you can ignore that. But if you're doing Apollo 11, you'd like mentorship, then I'll capture it there too. So I just want you to check that sheet. If it's all good, the role that corresponds to your team is good, then that's all fine. All right. So yeah, you guys are all running around. It looks like you're playing a game. That's great, but there's nothing to do on that slide yet. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, the second thing you already know is that you need to send me a slide, right? Both of you or one of you if your partner is not here today, or even if both partners are not here today and some unlucky guy or girl gets to have to present for other people, you need to have a slide to present from, okay? So you need to send me the slide, and it needs these things as a minimum, okay? Your names, especially if they match what you put in the Google Forms. Not if you didn't, that's all right. Your team name, okay. If it's changed, that also needs to be noted because sometimes you submitted you didn't have a team name. That's okay. Then you can suggest one. Okay. Otherwise, I will have put a team name for you. It's usually a number. Okay, so team number 20. If you didn't have, when you registered, you didn't have a partner, then I'll prefix that with an S. So S2 means the second person we said they didn't have a partner. Okay, you need to put your aim level of achievement. Again, if you're Apollo 11, you can say whether you're seeking mentorship or not. And it should be in landscape form because this projector, if you notice, is a bit of a landscape. All right. If you give me an A4 size slide in portrait, we'll show it. It's just not going to be as clear as if it's landscape. Okay. You have to submit it as a PDF file. If you give me a PPT, I'll just push it into PDF. If you send me more than one slide, you just get the first slide. So if it happens to be an intro slide and all your details are at the back, well, I'm sorry. Oops, wrong laptop. Okay, we need to have it by 1 o'clock today because I'm going to be sitting in the front, as I have been doing, furiously trying to put all these PDF files together. So we have 120 PDF files I can put together. Okay, you probably want to refer to this pitch in your evaluation. We'll talk about evaluation structure later this afternoon. And if you decide you don't want to broadcast for whatever reason, it's just sort of fun to have yourself videotaped and on YouTube. Okay, then you can tell me before you go on stage. I will turn off the camera. Actually, I'll be using this laptop in the front. It's going to point to this section. So the slide and you guys, your physical bodies will be captured. So what you're wearing today, you know, will be on this in the video. Okay, it's exactly 1 minute. Okay, if you take longer than 1 minute, you'll be pushed off the stage. Okay, if you take less than a minute, people will clap because we'll get out of here earlier. So if you want the concentration on yourselves, you could do something like that. That's my slide. Okay. If you want to be a little bit nicer, you could do something like this. Right? That looks familiar. So I was able to type all that. I have a set of cut and paste. Or if you'd like to be graphical, you can do something like that. Right? Put a whole big picture and then put the stuff in there. All right. Yeah. So there are a lot of you in this room, right? You all are going to have to come on stage, right? You want people to clap for you, or just go through this presentation. Try to make your presentation stand out. It's only a minute long. I mean, what can you do? You could do gymnastics on stage, whatever you want. It doesn't matter. Okay? Just have fun, because fun is what Orbital is about, and a little bit of learning too. Okay? That's all I have.
Okay. I can close this Excel as well.
All right, welcome back. This is the last portion of our workshop today, and we'll be talking about Git. Okay, just a show of hands, who has Git installed on your laptop already? Okay, so not bad, not bad. Okay, great, thank you. So if you have Git installed, you can follow along. If you don't, this might turn out to be quite important for you because you might be using Git next time for your CS2103 module. Otherwise, you'll be using something very similar. So the concepts and commands that I will be showing you today, will turn out to be quite useful eventually. Okay, and this is something very useful to use if you are a programmer. So let me talk about a bit about Git. Okay, so just go with me along this story. Okay, think back about maybe a couple of years back when you're working on your project, and you remember having like a million folders to keep track of all your files. You know, you have like the latest copy, and then you have like my latest copy, do not delete, and you have another copy of the copy. And the purpose of this is to make sure that the things that I did is not deleted by another person, and that the latest copy is always available. This is pretty disastrous because you have so many files and you want to keep track of them and you don't really know which is the latest. So Git actually helps you turn this mess into this. What you have left eventually is your file that you want to keep track of. For example, I'm doing Java, so I have a Java file that I want to keep track of, and a hidden folder called .git, which is where Git stores all the information that it needs to keep track of your files and allow you to revert to an earlier version of your files. So Git is extremely useful. I use it personally all the time for my projects, and Git is what GitHub uses as well, like, quite obviously from the name. For those who have Git, fire up your Git. So if you're on Windows, go to your start menu, Git bash. If you're on Mac, go to terminal and type, just go to terminal and you'll be fine. So I'm on Windows, so open up Git bash. You should get the command line screen. Okay, I hope you are familiar with command line. CS1010 should have taught you a bit with ls, cd. Okay, Git started out as a command line interface and is very powerful in the command line. It has graphic user interface as well, but the command line is extremely powerful because you can use it to do everything. Okay, really everything. Right, the first thing you want to do is do this configuration details. For those of you who have Git running, just key in these things inside. So you're basically telling Git or your name and your email. And for every time you make changes and you save those changes, Git will save the name and the email along with it. This is important because Git started out originally as a way for people working in different places to work on the same code. How many of you have heard of Linux? Linux? Who uses Linux here? No? Sad. Okay, one, I see. Okay, so Git was invented by the creator of Linux, Linus Torvalds. Okay, so he originally invented it because he was sick of sending zip files to all his fellow people who were working on Linux. So he created this system, this distributed system for people to work on the same code together. And this information becomes very important because you want to know who made changes to this piece of code. So recently there was this go-to bug, right? You know, iOS, there was the heartbeat bug, and now there's the O-off bug. So when you have this information, it becomes easy to track down who is that guy who made this change and broke everything. It is easy to blame someone for it, make someone responsible. So when you're working in a team, it's important that you have this because you know who caused this mess. Okay, and if you're on Mac, you will probably want to follow this. This is just a command to let you enter commit messages in a nicer editor. Okay, anyone still doing this? You okay, right? Okay, so to check, how do you check whether these changes are already saved? Go to your terminal or git bash and type git. Oops. There's tab completion, so you can just type git config. Okay, user dot name, and it should return you the name that you have entered. So this is like a query into your settings to ask for this setting if it's set or not. So besides user.name, you have user.email. So you have tab completion for all this, so it's awesome. So I have my email there as well. So okay, I'm all configured and ready to start using Git. The first thing you want to know about Git is that Git tracks everything inside what it calls a repository. Okay, so it's a store. It's a store for Git to keep track of everything. Keep track of all your files and the metadata associated with it. So the way you start, the way you initialize or create a Git repository is using the command line git init. So let's say I want to start tracking my the Orbital HTML file that I've just created. On Git, navigate to the folder where you created the HTML file. For me, it was on desktop. So for me, it's simply cd desktop Orbital, and I can see that my file is there. Cool. You have any problems with that? For Windows users who are like allergic to command line, you can actually do this on File Explorer as well if you have installed it properly. How you do it is this. Okay, go to the desktop, Orbital, right click, git init here, and then magically you have a Git repository there as well. But no, we are going command line today because we're hipster. So git init, and it says initialize empty Git repository in the. So .git is a folder that exists inside the folder. Okay, it's the repository where Git keeps everything. So if you want, you could explore inside. So it's quite a dangerous place to go. You might get lost, but I'm just going to bring you in today and see what's there. cd dot git. Okay, so you can see blah blah blah. There are a few folders, objects, reference, config, description, head. So you can take a look at config. So some configuration details that you might not ever need to see. So the point I'm trying to make here is that everything in Git is actually explorable using using your command line. Okay, all your Git commands, for example, git config it's all wrapper around editing text files, and that is what Git is extremely good at. Okay, keeping track of text files. Git can keep track of images, PDF, documents as well. It can keep track of any kind of files, but it is amazingly good at keeping track of text files, and we will see an example of that later on. So now we have our Git repository initialized. What we want to do is we want to ask Git about the status of our repository. What is happening to this repository? Okay, and the command to do that is git status. So git status. Can you see that? Is it okay for everyone? Cool. Sorry, cause I was in the wrong directory, I gotta go to. So I have to be in the same folder as the .git folder. Then I can type git status. And you can see like a bunch of messages, it doesn't really make any sense at this point of time, but at the end you should be able to figure out what it's trying to say. Okay, so the first thing we want to go through is the first line, which is on branch master. Right? Git has this notion of branches. Okay, branches are think of it as parallel universes where your code can exist. So you can have many branches from Git. Okay, and each branch can be doing different things. You can be experimenting on different features and different part of the code on different branches. But the important thing about branches is that branches are isolated. What you do in one branch does not affect what happens in another branch. So that's a great thing about branches. Okay. And then the next one you can see is this unchecked files, and under there you have your index.html. What this means is that when you initialize it does not track everything in the folder. Can anyone tell me why is it a bad idea to automatically check things? Yeah? It is bad because if you have a file, let's say the file contains something secretive. Okay, once if it automatically tracks everything and you upload it, everyone can see it, and that's a bad idea, right? A secret is not supposed to be seen. So Git forces you to manually add files to be tracked. And the way to add files is it's very convenient because they tell you how to track files. It's using this git add command. Okay, so git add basically tells Git that, hey, I want to track this file. Okay, add this file to your list of files to be tracked. And it's done using git add index.html. Okay, and there's no response, but we can check it using git status. Now you see a difference. Index was under untracked files, but now it is in changes to be committed. And here we are introduced to the new concept of being committed. What does it mean to be committed, right? Like when you're in a relationship, what does it mean to be committed? Okay, that doesn't make any sense. But in Git, right, when you commit something, it means that it's for life, which is not really good in real life. But when you're committed in Git, you are saving that changes. You're saving those changes. Okay, I'm telling Git that remember this, don't forget. Okay, you're saving the changes to a list of changes that it keeps track of. So so the way to commit something, right, is this git commit. Git commit. And you can just press enter. And something should pop up. Okay, here. See? Notepad should pop up. And this it will ask for a commit message. A commit message is basically a description of the commit that you are making. So for this, because it's my first commit, I will just say that it's my first commit. Okay, I mean whatever message you want. Then after that, close Notepad, and you can see that there are some changes here. Your commit message is here, and it tells you that one file changed. Okay, the rest you don't really need to know about it now. Okay, so that's how Git works. That's how you use Git. You add files, you commit changes, and then you're done. It's committed. Okay, a note about commit messages. Every time you commit something, the window will pop out and ask you for a commit message. And it's extremely important that you write meaningful commit messages. So let's take a look at bad commit messages. Okay, so you have commit messages like oops, like and it works. So these are bad commit messages because you cannot really tell what is the commit about. You don't know what is happening with this commit. What did I do with this commit? Okay, whereas good commit messages look something like this. Okay, oh, I fixed issue number 113, where the issue is that the software hangs when spacebar is pressed. Or this commit is about moving images to separate folder, or blah blah blah, whatever. Okay, so the useful thing about having a good commit message is this. You can view the history of your commits. And that's a very important feature, okay? So using git log, you can see the history. For now, the history is very short because I only have one commit. Okay, git log. But if you want to see another project, so let's just see another one of my project. Okay, so this is the repository for the slides and whatever I'm using now. And if I look at the git log, okay, you can see that there's quite a few. So I have messages like remove stray semicolon from CSS nodes. So I know exactly what I did. Okay, I removed a stray semicolon from CSS nodes. I update the Git slides and any pictures to show why Git is useful. So that was the folder pictures just now, and blah blah blah. So I have all these commits. So it's quite a number, but no, you shouldn't be scared about committing. It's important that you commit small changes. Okay, so that's it. And one problem you have with this is that, look, it's giving me too much information. I have this commit hash. This is an ID of the commit. Okay, it's essentially a SHA-1 hash of all the changes. It has my name and type and blah blah blah. And there's a way for me to look at all this in a much simpler manner, and this is called git log dash dash one line. And you can essentially guess what you will do. You will display every commit as a single line. So these are all my commits so far, which isn't really a lot actually. So this is the shortened SHA-1 hash of my commit, and this is my commit title. Okay, so this is a very useful way to visualize all my commits and refer to them using a shorter hash instead of the long 40 character hash you see just now. Okay, so yep, oops. Right. As I was mentioning earlier, Git is extremely useful for keeping track of text. And what is HTML but a chunk of text? So the way we can use Git to help us visualize differences and changes is using this thing called Git diff. Okay. So let us try something here. We are at our index page, and let us delete this style for hover over links. And then we go back to Git and we type git diff. And look, okay, it tells us the differences between my current file, the file that I have, my working copy, the file I've just edited, versus the file I have committed earlier on. So the difference is this. I minus this line, minus this line. Essentially, these few lines are missing. These few lines have disappeared. Okay, when I compare my committed file and my current working file. Okay, so that's pretty cool, right? So every time you do something, you can check what differences there are. And you can even check what differences there are between two different commits. So if we look back at the other repository I have, so if we want to see the differences between the very first commit and the very last commit, all I have to do is to specify this alphanumeric chunk here as an argument to my git diff. So for example, I'll use a short form here, and that is head. Head essentially refers to where you are currently on in Git. So which part of the tree are you at? And I want the very first commit. So the commit ID is C2021C6. Okay, and I should be able to get a diff of all that have everything that has changed. So I have this changed. What else? I have all these random files that have changed. My slides, my notes, all these have changed between the current commit and the very last commit. Okay, so it's not very useful comparing all this, but just to give you an idea of what git diff does. Okay, and essentially that's all you need to know for beginner Git. Okay, you check the status using git status. You add a file using git add. You check the status again to make sure that you have added the correct files to be tracked. You commit them, and then again you check to make sure that all your changes have been made. And you can visualize all this using git log or git diff to view the changes, and yeah. So let us get some practice on using Git. For those who have Git open, we'll try using it. Okay. So also one thing I want to introduce to you is that making websites are hard. Is hard. Okay, making websites is hard, and a lot of extremely smart people out there have packaged certain ways to make websites into a very easy to use framework. And one of the most popular framework that you might have heard of is Bootstrap. Okay, Bootstrap is a framework that started off from Twitter, and now is I guess the most popular framework for making web pages. And it does a lot of things, but we are just going to make use of the simple components that Bootstrap offers to make our web page look a lot nicer. Okay, the way to get Bootstrap, their instructions on their homepage is this. Okay, so this they are getting standard instructions. It says to use the Bootstrap CDN, so it's another CSS file. Okay, you just put in the link to your HTML and it should all work. Okay, but for convenience, I have downloaded it inside my slide. I've uploaded it inside my slide. So let's see. So for me, I have, where is it? Okay, so I have, we're just gonna download it now and then just get it. So go to, copy the URL from the website and you should get the CSS. Save it on, in the same folder as your Orbital. Okay, so now your Orbital folder should have two files, the CSS file and your index file. Cool? And using it is very simple. Okay, we just add a link reference to it. Copy. Okay, this is our page. Okay. Put a link to it. And it's done. Okay, so this is now our web page. No difference, right? The reason why there's no difference is because we still have our style here. Okay? So if you remember, I mentioned there are three ways to do CSS. Inline, we tried that. Style tag, which is what we're doing now, and external style sheet, which is what Bootstrap is doing here. Okay? We are using external style sheet to import Bootstrap inside. And actually, because there are so many ways to define CSS, there has to be a way to override. And the precedence is this. Inline CSS has precedence over style tags, which has precedence over external style sheets. So what is happening here is that our style tag is taking precedence over Bootstrap, and so all these are applied instead of Bootstrap. So what we need to do is delete all this tag, delete the style tag. And we should see some differences. So let's go back to our web page and refresh, and you can see these differences. How do we know that Bootstrap is applied? Very simple. Look at the links. Remember how links used to look like? It was blue with underline. But because we have imported the Bootstrap CSS file, it is now in a nicer blue and without underline unless you hover over it. Okay? So this is how you know that you have successfully imported Bootstrap. Okay, and now let's actually make our site look nicer. Now we are like back to square one and it's all ugly. Okay, first thing we want to do is we want to style the navigation bar. We want to get the navigation bar back to what it looked like now, the logo on the left and the links on the right. And the way to do this is very simple in Bootstrap. I just need to define certain classes for my navigation, that's all. So I want to add this class to my UL. Okay, I want to add the class nav pills, and pull right. You don't really have to know how these classes are implemented, and that's the beauty of using a framework. You just know what you want, and you just know what adding certain things do, and then you just do it, just add it without knowing how it works. And it should make things somewhat nicer. Look, by adding a few words, what I've done is I have made all of them in a single line, and I even have hover effects for them. When I hover over it, it shows me the gray highlight, and there's no ugly underline. Pretty cool, right? Like, for so little work. Okay, the next thing is uh, change the div logo to H3 logo. So these are definitions that Bootstrap is like API. You know, Bootstrap defines certain rules, and if you follow the rules, you'll get what you want. So the next thing is to change the div to a H3. So that means this. Okay, let's see what happens. Okay, so yeah, okay, not much, no big changes, just like that. Move the H3 logo to below ULNF. So the ordering of the elements matter. So header at the top versus header at the bottom, there are differences, and you can see this in a moment. Okay, so the difference is that this thing jumped up, right? So previously this was a block element that was covering the entire thing, but because I move it below, there's some changes in layout, and it manages to squeeze everything in the same line. Okay, so okay, what we have been forgetting to do, which is really the part of this, is to use Git. So, but actually, after everything that we did, I wanted us to check our code to Git, but I kind of forgot at the first part. So it's okay, we'll do it now. So now we have done some changes, right? And for Windows user, go to your Git bash, okay, and type Git status. And you should see that there are certain files that have changed. Okay, if I want to see what changes have been made to a single file, I can just use git diff and pass in the file name as the argument. So this shows me what has changed inside index.html. Oops. Okay, so this is what changed. So as an exercise, let's try adding in files one by one and committing them. So yes, step completion. Remember to press tab. So the first thing I want to do is that I added bootstrap. So git add bootstrap. I will commit it, and I will say this is a commit message added bootstrap. Add. Okay, simple. Now if I check git status, okay, you notice that there's only one modified file that it has not keep track of. So every time the file is modified, it will not keep track of the changes until you direct to do so. So the next thing I'll do is add this modified file. Okay, so now we have both changes inside, and it should say the repository is clean, working directly clean, nothing to commit. Everything you have changed is taken care of already. Okay, so that is good, and let's continue with Bootstrap. Okay, a lot of sites nowadays you see you have a nice big picture and then you have a big red button or green button that says buy now or try now, sign up now. So what we're gonna do is essentially the same thing. Okay, we want to make a call to action, and how we do that is using. Oh, okay. I think 5 minutes. Okay. Yeah. So how we gonna do this is using this div.jumbotron, and we'll just do this. Okay. Under the details ID, I will add a new class, Jumbotron. And now you see it's styled completely differently. It's a gray background and it has much bigger font now. Okay? And to add a button, I actually just define a new class with the btn, stands for button, and it will style it for me accordingly. Okay, so that's it. Right? So yeah, that's Bootstrap, and I actually wanted us to try using GitHub to collaborate, but I'm not sure how many of you have GitHub accounts, but I'm just going to walk through GitHub very quickly. So the URL that I gave you earlier is this. Okay, so this is my repository on GitHub. Okay, I hosted it there. It's for free, and you can actually clone it using this URL here. So cloning basically just means make a local copy of the repository you have online, and it is done using this command. Okay, git clone. Oh, okay, it already exists. Okay, so I'm just putting a copy and putting it on my computer. So I'm having a local copy of it, and then I can make changes and I can push it back to the server. So this is the way to use GitHub to collaborate, and that's probably one way you might want to do that with your partner. So it takes a while because there are a lot of files. Okay, and then when it's done, you can see we have all this. Okay, so if you want to keep a copy of the slides that I have, you can do this, go to the repository and then just clone it down to your own computer. Yeah, these are some references that I have for learning Git. As part of NUS Hackers, we conduct Hacker School. So we teach Git as one of the workshops, one of the 4 workshops we have. So in that workshop, we cover a bit more about Git. Okay, about 300% of what we learned today. We learn a bit more about how Git works. And then Git's official website is a very good reference manual. No, no. Okay, so the workshop materials are actually on this repository. The slides are there. So if you want, go to the reference, click on the link, and go and download and read it at your own time. Git's official website has very good documentation, very in depth. And if you want to learn more, you can do it. GitHub has a guide on how to use GitHub, and you can try Git online as well. So to learn Git, you can try it online. This is pretty cool. And if you're interested in how Git works, there's a website that I linked to. It teaches you about how Git works internally using blobs and hashes and stuff like that. Okay. This is actually the end of CSS. Sorry, for Git. So the workshop is more or less done, but I want to show you the resources that I have linked for you. So go through one by one. This is a very fun game to learn about CSS selectors. So you have all these plates, right? And it's telling you that I want to select all the plates. Okay. So to select this, I just type plate and then I enter, and then yeah, I selected it. Okay. So it's to teach you about CSS selectors. The rest are all really references. So Mozilla Developer Network, webplatform.org, HTML Rocks. All these are sites where you can get inspiration and you can learn tutorials. So one thing I like about one of my favorite sites is this Code Drops. Every week they have a newsletter that features very nice websites and articles that teach you how to do certain things. So I actually subscribe to their newsletter, and then every week I get very nice sites to see. So some examples of very pretty sites are this. Yeah, I hope it looks fine. So all these are actually these are web pages. Okay, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and okay, so right animations, and then here click, and then there's scrolling, pictures. Okay, the resolution sucks, so you cannot really see. Yeah, but you see, all these are websites. These are all in the links. Okay, so you can explore it on your own. For example, Okay, this is a library for you to do parallax effects. So you can see as I move my mouse, different images respond differently. Okay, so these are some gems that you can use in your website to make things a bit more beautiful. Okay, and the last one is this is a website by WWF, and it actually tells a story about I think what their goal is. So my name is A go, and ask me to scroll down. So that's what I do. Scroll down, and you have nice animations. You know, wow, a long time ago, dinosaurs, and then yeah, you can explore it on your own. So all these are really click here, and then you will do something. You will tell me about fossil fuel and stuff, global warming. So what I want to say here is that all these are possible using HTML, CSS, JavaScript. It's really how much you want to learn and how much you want to explore your own. And Orbital is a great chance for you to explore your own. So treasure this opportunity, learn as much as you can. And if you need anything, you need links to resources or help, feel free to approach me. Okay. My contact details are on the URL on the slide, so you can find me through email or GitHub or Twitter or whatever. Okay, great. Thanks for your time. Sorry for taking up so long, but I hope all of you managed to learn something new today. Great, thank you.
Yeah, I don't think that pause is enough for someone who's just given a 3-hour lecture, huh? Now, Zion is doing this out of the goodness of his heart. He's not paid, you know. Lecturers are paid, right? So you really have to thank him for all the hard work that he put in. And all of you now know HTML and CSS. You need to practice. If you haven't sent your slides in, you need to do so. The worksheet that I showed you now is now populated with some information, so you will do that. Otherwise, you should get some lunch, right? Because you need to be back here 1 o'clock with some caffeine or whatever, because App Engine will be next. Okay, see you in 50 minutes.
Sorry, I took off so long.
No, it's okay. It's always like that. You did pretty good for first time. You can shut down there.